Hello, my name's Don Hudson. Today we're going to talk about seat belts and their applications. The module you're about to view is designed to provide you with information about the importance of wearing your seat belt in a vehicle. I will share some statistics, important information, videos, and real-life examples to demonstrate the importance of the safety feature. Let me begin with a real-life example. In the year 2006, my youngest daughter was killed in a car collision. 24 years of age. She was not wearing a seat belt. So as we talk today, I want you to understand it's coming from the heart. It's real to me. It needs to be real to you. Let's first talk about some crash data. 2012, 5,615,000 total crashes in the United States. Over 33,000 people were killed. Over 2 million people were injured. Pretty astounding when you think about it. So once again, those 33,000 persons killed in motor vehicle crashes nationwide. That's an average of 92 people each day. One person every 15 minutes. Then, over 2 million people were injured in motor vehicle traffic crashes nationwide. That's 4.5 people every minute. To me, that's astounding. But this final bullet is what I want you to really look at. 52% of those killed were unrestrained. They were not wearing seat belts. We could cut that number in half possibly just by wearing our seat belts. Seat belts are designed to retain people in their seats and prevent or reduce injuries suffered in a collision. They help keep you in control of your vehicle as a driver during a collision. You got to be in that seat to be able to control that vehicle. It can reduce the risk of fatal injury to front seat occupants by 45% and the risk of moderate to critical injury by 50%. Seat belts have saved an estimated 12,000 lives in 2012. As you can see, it's real important to wear these seat belts. They're useful. Watch this gentleman here as he isn't wearing his seat belt. As you can tell by this video, not only did he lose control of his vehicle, he lost control of himself. He's in the back seat. Got to wear those seat belts. You got to stay planted in that front seat. Proper seat belt use is something most of us think we know, but we're just going to touch base on it anyway so you know. First of all, you need to sit up straight. Draw the belt snug across your lap and fasten it. Make sure that the belt is flat and not twisted. And then please do not recline your seat while driving. This increases the chances of sliding out from underneath your seat belt. The shoulder harness, you need to also sit up straight while you're doing that. Pull it across your shoulder, down across your chest snugly. Do not put the belt under your arm. When you do that, you risk injury to your ribs and your abdomen area. Do not slide it behind you either. Now, this works with the lap belt and protects you from additional harm by keeping you in the safe zone. Your seat is the safe zone. Let's watch this video now. This is York County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Bruce Bryant.
Each year, 33,000 people are killed in motor vehicle crashes. Hi, I'm Trent Ferris, Public Information Officer here at the York County Sheriff's Office. Did you know the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says car crashes are the leading cause of death for people ages 4 to 27 in the United States? Buckling up is the most important safety measure you can take to protect yourself in a crash, as it helps keep you safe and secure inside your vehicle.
Wearing your safety belt when in a motor vehicle is the safest thing you can do out here driving with aggressive and impaired drivers as far as safety precautions are concerned.
Every hour, at least one person dies in this country because he or she didn't buckle up. Failure to use a seatbelt contributes to more fatalities than any other single traffic safety-related behavior.
When you're putting your seatbelt on, you want it to come over your shoulder. Most vehicles now have adjustments here where you can raise it up or down depending on your height. You want the shoulder belt to come directly across your shoulder and the lap belt to come directly across your lap. right about where your hips are. A lot of people will wear them under their arm, which in this situation, if you're involved in a front collision, you have a chance of breaking several ribs with the seatbelt here. Pregnant ladies should keep the lap belt below their belly as not to put pressure on their stomach if they are involved in a collision, and the shoulder belt should be kept above their belly for the same reason. Even though cars are now, most of them equipped with the airbag side and front, they will not keep you in the car in all situations. The seat belt is what's going to keep you in the car.
If you don't wear your safety belt, the York County Sheriff's Office DUI and aggressive drivers team will pull you over and give you a ticket. Safety belts are the most effective form of safety in a vehicle today. They're estimated to save 9,500 lives a year. So please wear your safety belt. It can save your life and save you from a ticket. I'm Trent Ferris with the York County Sheriff's Office.
As you can see, it's important that you wear your seatbelt. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about seatbelt excuses. We've all heard them, right? Seatbelts wrinkle my clothes. That's not a good excuse. They're uncomfortable. Yes, I will admit sometimes you first start wearing seatbelts, they are uncomfortable. But once you're used to having that seatbelt on, you're going to find that the comfort it gives you to know that you have control of that vehicle is invaluable. Then you have that excuse, I'm only going down to the corner. You need to remember 40 miles an hour and below is where most people have collisions. Within 25 miles of home, put it on, no matter how far you're going. It will injure me. Yes, sometimes seatbelts do injure you, but they will protect you. The next one, I don't want to be trapped if there's a collision or my vehicle ends up on fire or in water. Incineration and drowning, less than 0.1% of the people that perish in accidents did that apply to. The next one, I want to be thrown clear of the crash. Once again, big mistake. 75% of the people that are thrown clear of a crash perish in that collision. You've got to stay in that car. Now the final one, I'm not going to let the government tell me what to do. You need to think of your safety and your health. Put that seatbelt on. One thing you need to understand when there's a collision, there's actually 3 collisions within a collision. First, you have the vehicle. It hits the object. Second, the body crashes into the inside of the vehicle. Then finally, the body's organs collide with bones. So you have these 3 crashes. Let's talk about the first one. When a vehicle crashes into another vehicle or solid immovable object, it crushes, absorbing some of the force of the collision. But it doesn't stop there. But let's look at this next video. It's going to show us what it's like when a crash dummy has a seatbelt on and when it doesn't have a seatbelt on. So watch closely. Compare the two. As you can tell when you compare the 2 crash dummies, the one without the seatbelt definitely is more in harm's way. Got to have that seatbelt on. Then you have the human collision. At the moment of impact, the driver and passengers in the vehicle are still traveling at the vehicle's original speed. Then when the vehicle stops, the occupants continue forward until they come in contact with some part of the vehicle. Now, to put it in perspective, watch this next video.
If you have a collision at 25 miles an hour and you're not wearing a seatbelt, it's like falling from a 2-story building. At 40 miles an hour, it's like falling from 6 stories high. And at 60 miles an hour, if you're not wearing your seatbelt and you crash, it's like falling from 12 stories high. Buckle up.
So as you can see, at 60 miles an hour, it's as if you're jumping from a building at 12 stories. Seatbelt's important? What do you think? Then you have the human collision. The occupants can also cause serious injuries to other occupants. Rear seat passengers often hit people in front. Many times they find out that people that are killed in a collision had their seatbelt on, but those that didn't have their seatbelt on did all the damage. You must insist that all passengers wear their seatbelts. Let's look at it this way. Let's go to the local bowling alley. Let's get a 16-pound bowling ball. Let's put it in the back seat of our car and go 60 miles an hour and slam on the brakes. Does that sound very smart? Probably not. But that's what happens when these bodies are flying around in a vehicle. You need to think of that. Okay, this next video is going to more than illustrate what I'm talking about.
Body to body, funky to funky, we know how to rock your party.
This is Michael. Today he's going to hit his girlfriend so hard she ends up with permanent brain damage.
Funky to funky, we know how to rock your party.
I can never get enough of a man like you. Do me one more, something never ends with a man like you.
Three dead in this vehicle. The girl is critical. They say the guy without the seatbelt did the damage.
No seatbelt, no excuse.
If you were listening carefully to that last video, at the beginning it said, "This is Michael. Today he's going to hit his girlfriend so hard he's going to cause permanent brain damage." Then at the end it went on to explain 3 dead in the vehicle, 1 critical. They say all the damage was done by the one not wearing the seatbelt. The other 3 were. Okay. Internal collision. We'll talk about that. Internal organs are still moving even after a human body comes to a complete stop. The internal organs can slam into other organs and then the skeletal system. Internal collision is often the cause of serious injury or death. I'm here to tell you I know it firsthand. That's how my daughter died in her collision. Internal injuries.
Richard didn't want to die, but he couldn't stop himself. The collision with the car didn't kill him, but he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he continued on his journey. When he hit the inside of the car, that didn't kill him either. But his internal organs carried on traveling until they hit his rib cage, and his lungs were punctured, and the main artery from his heart was torn. And that's what killed Richard.
Now we're going to let a science teacher and a doctor explain to you what it is with the organs and how the body works in a collision. So let's look at this. Pay close attention. I think it'll really open your eyes.
Hi, I'm Griff Jones. I'm a science teacher, and I'm here at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's Vehicle Research Center to explore the basic science behind injuries in vehicle crashes. So let's go behind the scenes and take a closer look at what happens to the human body in a crash. What is the first scientific discipline that comes to mind when you think of car crashes? It's probably physics, right? Because Newton's laws of motion govern what happens to a vehicle in a crash. But if we want to understand how crashes cause injuries to people, we need to look at what occurs when physical forces are applied to organs, tissues, and cells. This happens when physics meets biology in a field called injury biomechanics. The Institute's Vehicle Research Center is a world-class facility for vehicle research and testing. A reporter described the crash hall with its 3 runways as a cross between a Hollywood soundstage and a NASA clean room. Vehicles are propelled down the runways at precise speeds, using a system of nitrogen-powered hydraulic motors and cables. The lighting array provides up to 750,000 watts of non-glare illumination for the 500 frames per second high-speed cameras. The research tests they're conducting here today focuses on how injuries occur in real-world crashes. This experimental crash replicates one in which a car hit a tree. In an attempt to understand injury patterns found in the occupants of the actual crash, researchers have disconnected the airbags.
Looking at the driver's chest, we can see the chest deflection reached about 50 millimeters of compression. The chest acceleration is 70 to 80 G, resultant acceleration range. High likelihood of skull fracture.
Very bad.
Yeah, very bad.
Figuring out what just happened in this test crash is the job of the research engineers here. Using sophisticated tools like instrumented crash test dummies, instrumentation in the car, and slow-motion film, they can analyze every detail and construct a precise picture of exactly what the vehicle and the occupants went through. When research engineers use terms like the chest deflection reached about 50 millimeters, how does that relate to what a human occupant would experience? If chest acceleration is 70 to 80 Gs, which means that a force equivalent to 70 to 80 times the weight of the dummy's chest is pressing on it, is that survivable? But what do these stresses and strains actually do to people to cause injury? Let's start with some basic anatomy. Your body contains over 100 trillion cells and is structurally organized into 4 levels: cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. Tissue is a group of similar cells working together to perform a common function. Organs are made up of 2 or more types of tissue working together to perform a specific function. And each organ is part of at least one organ system that performs major activities or processes. Your body contains 4 fluid-filled spaces called body cavities that house and protect your major internal organs. Within the body cavities, your organs are suspended in fluid that supports their weight and prevents them from being deformed by normal movements. Your organs are also protected by your bones and muscles. For example, your heart and lungs are protected by your rib cage and sternum inside the thoracic cavity. Your brain is encased within your cranial cavity and is protected by your skull. Now, with this as background, remember the question from the beginning of this film: how is it possible to have 3 collisions in a single crash? Remember, the laws of physics hold true everywhere. On a highway, on a racetrack, and even inside your body. If a race car is going 200 miles per hour, so is the driver's body and every organ inside it. Let's answer the question. The first collision is between the car and the wall. The second is between the driver and the car's interior. And the third is between the driver's internal organs and the inside walls of his or her body cavities. Tell me a little bit more about the injury. To help us understand more about what happens to organs in the third collision, let's meet Dr. Stephen Olvey, a neurocritical care physician and director of the Neuroscience Intensive Care Unit at the University of Miami's Jackson Memorial Hospital.
Basically, during a crash, you have 3 collisions. You have the initial crash of the vehicle. Then you have the occupant hitting something inside the car and coming to a sudden stop. This results in impacts inside the body. For example, the lungs can hit the inside of the rib cage, the heart can hit the breastbone or inside of the rib cage, resulting in either a pulmonary contusion or myocardial contusion. This is what causes ruptured spleens, lacerated livers, because you have part of the organ well anchored and the other part is free to move about. And this causes a shearing force to take place in the organ, resulting in hemorrhage or tearing of the tissue. The brain is enclosed in a rigid case, the skull, and it's cushioned and surrounded by the cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid is actually a different density than the brain itself, so in the event of an impact to the skull, the brain begins to move, the cerebral spinal fluid begins to move, but it moves at a different rate than the brain. So it will actually displace the brain in the opposite direction of the initial impact to the brain.
This simple experiment helps illustrate the phenomenon. This represents your skull. There's water inside representing your cerebral spinal fluid, and the red gel is your brain. The gel floats because it's less dense than water, just like your brain is less dense than your cerebral spinal fluid. What do you think will happen to the brain during impact? Will it move forward, backward, or stay in the same spot? Let's see. The initial movement of the brain is toward the back of the skull. The more dense cerebral spinal fluid moves toward the side of the skull impact, displacing the brain in the opposite direction. If the impact is strong enough, the brain will initially impact the back wall of the skull, then rebound and hit the front of the skull.
It used to be that crashes were always referred to as accidents.
Accidents.
But that doesn't tell you how to prevent them. What tells you how to prevent them is to realize that this is a crash. It's a physical thing, it's predictable, it has predictable consequences. It's just the physics and the biology.
Whether it's on a racetrack, a rocket sled, or on the highway, the principles are the same. When forces are high on the occupants, there is potential for damage to tissue and organs. Keeping people safe in crashes has to do with extending impact time, keeping the occupant compartment intact, and tying the occupants to the compartment. What happens to the human body during a crash is determined by biology and physics. You can't argue with hard science.
Let's look at a map of the current state seatbelt laws. As you can see from this map, the states colored in green have a primary law. What that means is, if a police officer sees you without your seatbelt on, he can pull you over and give you a citation for not wearing your seatbelt. The states colored in orange, it's a secondary violation. That means the officer must suspect that there's another violation before he can pull you over and then cite you for the seatbelt law. And as you can see, there's only one state that doesn't have an adult safety seatbelt law. Let's take a look at this next diagram. We're going to talk about some of the safety features that cars have in these days. First of all, let's talk about the engine block. Nowadays, the engine block safely slides underneath the passengers in a collision. Then we have the front crumple zone. This is designed to dissipate some of the energy from a collision. Then we have the steering wheel column. They're collapsible these days, which makes it safer for passengers. Then we have the side impact bars. Side impact bars are just for what they say. It's for that impact from a collision from the side. Helps protect you. Then we have the rear crumple zone. Then we have the passenger safety cell. This is a rigid cage that prevents the roof from collapsing into the passengers. Now also with this cage, as you can see, if we can stay within that cage, we're much safer. That's where safety belts come in. The safety belt keeps you in your seat and keeps you within that safety cell. Then the airbag adds its added protection. So as you can see, all these new safety features important to the safety of us. Seat belts, I keep telling you, you gotta wear that seat belt. If you don't have your safety belt on, folks, number one, an airbag won't work properly. Also, you're not held in that zone. You want to stay in that safety zone. You need to stay in that seat. You need to be adhered to that seat. And that's what the seatbelt does. Got to wear them to let these cars and all these new inventions and things help you in saving your life. Safety features in today's cars have a great capacity for reducing the risk of injury. Look at the seatbelt. 50% greater chance of reducing that risk. Driver's airbag, that's an additional 5 to 10%. Then if we look at curtain bags from the side collision, 45%. You have seatbelt pre-tensioners and the headrest. And with the headrest, you want to make sure that it's adjusted properly or it's a fixed headrest. They greatly reduce the risk of injury to the neck. All of these things added together protect you that much more. Here are some seatbelt safety tips. Always buckle up before driving or riding in a vehicle. Folks, you gotta make it a habit. You need to do that every time you get in your vehicle. Wear the lap belt low across the hips and below your stomach. Wear the shoulder belt over your collarbone, away from your neck. A seat belt that works properly will keep you at a safe distance from the dashboard and the airbag. You have to wear these seat belts and use them properly. Here's another video you need to watch. Heart-jerking to me. Pay attention.
It was Christmas Day 2011 when a tragedy struck our small community. Brett Wagner and Josh Rogers, two teenagers from a local high school, lost their lives in a senseless accident. They had not been drinking, texting, or speeding. They died because they failed to follow the rules and buckle their seatbelts. Both were ejected from the truck. Brett died on the scene, but Josh clung to life for 2 days in a hospital bed before he took his last breath. The third passenger in the truck had his seatbelt on and walked away.
Well, we had had a pretty good Christmas day. Boys were playing.
It was about 8:30. Josh and Lenny left the house. In less than an hour, we received a call.
And it was the third passenger in the truck, Taryn, my nephew's girlfriend, on the phone.
Before we could get out of the driveway, another call came in. and it was Kevin, and he was hysterical. And he said, "Miss Gina, it's Josh. He's bad. He's very bad. You got to get here."
When we pulled up, there was fire trucks, there was ambulances, they had the road blocked off.
I remember getting to the scene, seeing the truck upside down.
All I saw was someone laying on the ground, and I was running towards them. And then I remember seeing Taryn, which is my nephew, and he grabbed me by the arms and he was screaming at me. He was the third passenger. Brett's already gone. And I didn't know what he meant by it, so I looked at him and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "They already took Brett to the hospital." I knew. I knew from the minute of the phone call. A bunch of nurses and a doctor came out. And he looked at me and he said, "Brett didn't make it." And I looked at him and I said, "What? What? What did you say to me?" And he said, "I'm sorry."
After hours, they finally brought us into a room. And as we sat there praying for Josh, we were told that Brett was gone.
I saw him laying there. And I walked up and I told him that he's going to have to help me because I don't know how to do this. I can't do this without him. He's got to help me. And he was beautiful. Not a scratch, not a mark on him. And it's funny, the things that go through your head at that point, because I had my hands on his face and I wanted to memorize every curve of his face. And I can still feel it when I close my eyes. I can still remember how his face felt. And his nose and his mouth and his ears and his chin. And I can remember sitting there just wishing one more time. I wanted to see his beautiful blue eyes.
To be sitting there praying to God not to take Josh, but knowing Bro was gone and we couldn't be there for him. They had told us that there wasn't much that they could do for Josh. And Josh held on for 2 days. He wasn't him. He didn't look like him. And through all of this, as hard as it's been, we know without question they would be with us if they had their seatbelts on. We believe that had Josh and Brett made the choice and followed the rules that night, that they would be with us today. It's been a very difficult year. It's not easy to say that our boys made a mistake by not following the rules, because it ultimately cost them their lives. All we can do is share our story, spread the message, and ask that each and every one of you make the right choice, follow those rules, and protect yourselves.
As you can see, that last video really is a tearjerker, and it hits home with me because I've been through what those people have been through. Now let's talk about Federal Motor Carriers Safety Association regulations. In section 392.16, it indicates that commercial motor vehicles which have a seat assembly must be worn, must be properly worn, okay? You've got to wear those seat belts. It's a regulation. Company policy going along with that. Company policy is drivers and passengers must wear their seat belts. All passengers should be seated. Do not allow passengers to ride in the back of trucks. If a passenger's in the back of a truck and you're in a collision, they become a projectile. They have very little chance. Not always do you have a patchy grass of green that they're going to land on, okay? Seat belts should be installed and used in all motor vehicles as per specific state and federal requirements. And vehicles used to transport employees shall have seat belts firmly secured and adequate for the number of employees to be carried. If you have an extra person, get another vehicle. Everybody has to be belted. The company environment, well, you probably already know this, but safety and quality are non-negotiable. NPL doesn't compromise on safety and quality, and you're thus authorized and responsible, no matter your position, to speak up and not perform any task that would violate any policy, procedure, or standard, whether it be the company's or customers, or any rule or regulation. So if you see something that's unsafe, speak up. Stop it now. Safety is of utmost importance for NPL. Do what you have to do to help them out. So in closing, I just want to make you think about it. To make the right choice, buckle up every time you get in that car. It's imperative you do that. For yourself, for your family, for the company. So think about it from now on. Every time, buckle up.